All right. Welcome to episode 2 in season 2 of Teachers Talk. My name is Brian Higgins. I teach in Central Washington. I teach high school English, drama and stagecraft, and AP language. And I also teach AVID, sophomore and senior AVID. Great. Molly, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, I'm Molly Ravitz. I teach at Cascade High School in Leavenworth, about 45 minutes from Wenatchee High School. Yeah, same zone. I'm Upper Valley, you're Lower Valley. I teach science, 9th, 10th grade mostly, with AP Environmental Science as well. And then I will be teaching AVID next year.
Heck yeah.
And I am stoked.
All right. Cesar.
My name is Cesar Mendoza. I teach in Christmastown, USA, aka Leavenworth, Washington. I teach math and science. Yep, go STEM. Let's get it.
Go STEM. All right, let's start with fails. Who would like to share their fail first? How'd you fail this week?
I can go first. I'll go first. Well, I think since we went to hybrid, we have to record ourselves using a Chromebook while we have real students in real time in our classrooms. And I forgot to open my Zoom up. And so when I went to go check, my good old students were still hanging out in my weight room, in my Zoom.
Just sitting there.
Like, hey, and it's one student, dude, one student, really, really cool student. He's like, hey, Mendoza. It's like, aren't you supposed to have the remote people right now? And I'm like, crap. Like, all right. So I went on there, logged in, and then, it's a Chromebook, right? And Chromebooks are flimsy and cheap. And by the time I got connected, it took me like 5 minutes of my actual, teaching time. And then finally I got in there and they were still there, just kind of like in my screen, hey, Mendoza, we're here. So yeah, that was my fail. And because I didn't just do it once, I did it multiple times. There's my fail.
That old room in Zoom, it is terrible. Oh, all right,
Could I? Yeah, I did the exact same thing. So Friday, I taught for 15 minutes on mute. And then finally this kid who is like normally very, very, very quiet, she like unmutes herself and is like, Mrs. Ravitz, we can't hear you at all. I was like, yeah, what? But she obviously couldn't hear that. She was like, we can't hear you. And I look, and I had muted myself because I had been talking to a kid at the end of the other period and then forgot to unmute myself. And then, so that was Friday. And then yesterday, same thing as Cesar, this kid, like 10 minutes into class is like, hey, Miss Ravitz, like, are you supposed to be on Zoom right now? And I was like, oh my God. And I like opened up Zoom and all the kids were sitting there waiting for me. They were like, what happened? I was like, you're fine. Let's go.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Hey, we're right on time today. And class is shorter because of things. So, man. Yeah, that room in Zoom is tough. My fail is not with Zooming, thank goodness, because I just forget to even Zoom whatsoever. So there's no one waiting in the waiting room because it's not open. Lately, I've been working with a social studies teacher to try to combine our AP courses and figuring out how we can teach them together to support each other, which is a really cool concept. And one of the reasons that we're trying to do this is to open doors for students who would not normally take our classes to take those AP classes and just have two really supportive teachers. And I was talking to my evaluator today, and she was super disappointed in me because we had taken my AP course, which is a 1 semester class, and I was trying to connect it to his AB, his rotating year-long course, which would have made it less accessible for those students in those semester courses. So I would have actually lost a bunch of students. And I did not realize exactly how many of those kids were focused on taking that semester-long course and not really taking the 2 AP courses. And so it was only through a really rough conversation that she and I had at the end of school that I realized instead of taking down barriers, I was putting barriers up. And so I was the guy blocking kids from having access. So it's a good thing that we had that conversation. It was pretty uncomfortable for the both of us, but really good that it happened because we found a pretty good solution at the end that we would not have found. Like we're about to survey kids and say, which would you rather do, AP language semester or both these classes AB? And the prevailing result would have been AB because we would have had, 26 of our 37 applicants would have said AB, and that would have cut the other 11 out, and the other 11 are in the population that we're trying to target. So would have lost that whole population.
Yeah.
So
That's always, that's hard when you're like, work really hard thinking your intentions are geared towards a certain like subset of students, and then the data or the reality is that you're actually not.
Yeah, you're just still working for the set that I was always getting supported.
Yeah.
So good stuff. But that also kind of ties to our topic today. Our topic today is not about how school is going right now in hybrid, as much as it is starting school next year in the fall. So next year in the fall, we're going to start schools with full classrooms, probably, at least in Washington State. That's what the governor has said. Full classrooms, all the students back in class, and we're going to have these mixed populations of students with wildly different skill levels in every layer of schooling. We're talking comfort with content. We're talking content knowledge, emotional communication, social learning, and social skills. All of our students, I mean, we've always had mixed groups of students, mixed skills or mixed social skills. But I think that we're going to see across the board, every classroom is going to be filled with this wildly diverse population when it comes to these skills. And one of the things that scares me is that if we don't talk about it now and think about it now, when school starts next year, we're going to feel like we're in another pandemic of a kind. And we're not going to be as prepared. So today's topic is, maybe it's not so much what are we doing right now to prepare our students to be successful at the beginning of next year when we're teaching them and they're all wildly different, but maybe what should we be doing and what should we be talking to our peers about doing right now with students, so that when they start the next school year, they're off on the best foot they could possibly be. I mean, we've lost content, we've lost social emotional learning, we've lost all this time, but it doesn't mean that the next 3 months is lost. We have 3 months to do something. So that's our big topic. Who wants to take a first big stab at it? It's pretty big.
Yeah.
Cesar just
Cesar,
muted himself so that he wouldn't have to. I'll tell you, one thing that I'm doing this year a lot, and I usually do it with my avid students, because those are the kids I feel comfortable being emotionally vulnerable with, I guess, because we have a longer relationship, is checking in very intentionally on their daily emotional states, and then sharing these statements class-wide in a very organized sharing circle. You know, I have students pick a handful of emotions and write about each emotion and then pick one of those things to share. So being able to have constant conversation about what we're feeling and why, and then hearing from everyone else, has historically, my kids have reported that it has helped them to understand that all these other students in the classroom are in this exact same place. So it becomes easier for them to communicate. So I've been transferring that to my non-avid classes, just to kind of get that ball rolling so that kids can, I mean, I didn't do it before because I was so good at managing a classroom and just being the guy on the spot with the kids. But I realized that these kids are not my students next year. And so if they show up to their sophomore or their senior class and they're not able to share their daily emotional state and what might be feeling that way, and then connecting back their behaviors, if they can't do that, then I'm really giving some teacher a really tough weight to carry for those kids that I definitely can carry right now. So, and get that out of the way.
I think so. We had an earlier episode from, oh my gosh, I have no idea when, November maybe, about like what we're doing to support students emotionally. Like it was like an SEL themed episode. I don't think you were there for that, Brian, or were you? Yeah, it was like Malia's friend, the PE teacher on the West Side.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I had brought up, because I had been doing this like SEL kind of like training thing this fall, winter, and just I don't need to go into like what I'm doing right now. I just want to like throw this out there as like, not all teachers I think are equipped to do like proper SEL because they might not be good at that themselves. And so one thing I don't want to do is mandate something that makes other teachers not necessarily uncomfortable. Like I want it to be like, if we're going to implement some type of SEL thing that's going to be consistent, like we did Character Strong last year, it needs to be implemented like with like authenticity. And I think that is something maybe we should like address as like a district. I'm not really making much sense here, but like
No, I mean,
it'll be forced by some people, right? And so it won't, like, it might just make kids really uncomfortable when there's a teacher who's like doing temperature checks, but they themselves obviously haven't done a temperature check on themselves. Like it, so that's like one thing that like we need to think through before we just like mandate this like SEL type thing.
yeah, I think it's not always great to blanket require a lot of things. I think that temperature checks are great to blanket require just because people need to do them. But if people like me who feel really comfortable doing that type of thing are doing that right now, then next year, if there is a blanket response like that across the district, the students that have been through my classes are going to feel very comfortable in that situation and be good examples for their peers. So, and the other thing is like, there's lots of teachers who are not good at that, but there's a lot of teachers who are really good at something. And if they are using that one thing to drive the relationship building they're doing in their classes, then that is something that brings those kids to the table and then prepares them a little bit for the next year as well. So I think it's really important to remind teachers like, we can't just be teaching. We can't just be teaching content. We have to be doing that extra thing that each of us can do. I mean, there's got to be something each of us can do above and beyond what our peers can do. And that's the thing that we should also be focusing on for our kids, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Cesar?
I like what you're saying, and that's one thing that I was thinking about when I was going to go ahead and take my turn. As far as Molly's right. Where there are some teachers who are not comfortable with unleashing those kind of emotions in the classroom, and then and managing that kind of energy. Because when you do that, there's a bunch of energy that comes out, and then you as a facilitator, as a teacher, you have to take that energy and work it out where everybody says something, and then at the end it's sort of like a healing process where people they either vent or they say how they're feeling, and towards the end everybody feels like, okay, I had my say, I feel a little better, people are feeling similar to me or whatnot. But I think that if there are some pockets of teachers who do that, that we are reaching some of those students, because not necessarily going to do that every single period. So as long as you have some volume of teachers who are doing that, you're going to reach a portion of the student body. So I was thinking that. I was thinking in terms of how else we're going to succeed when we come back next school year, and I was thinking more on the academic side. One thing that was really, really powerful and helpful in my experience teaching math and science is the way you organize your classroom, and particularly in the lower level classes, like your freshman, sophomore classes, is if you already are talking about students who are behind academically, who are behind, with social skills or whatnot, if you put them in a group and you make your format of the class where every single time it's time for somebody to respond, where you make it a team response, and you have assigned team members for that, like your group of 4 or 5, that, okay, this team is going to respond, and it's like a team process of answering a question, and it's not always the same person answering the question, so it takes every single person to be part of the answer. I think you build on that, and the students become more social, and also you do team collaboration, and you catch them up because they're not on their own, right? You don't sit them in a traditional one row, all by themselves on a little island. They're together and they're working this stuff out. So I think in terms of catching up on content, that can be really powerful because you have, maybe somebody who knows the material really well to all the way to somebody who doesn't know, but they're part of the process. And I think that can be a great catch-up tool on content as we move forward next school year.
Or acceleration tool to go to the pre-show. Yeah. And
There
that's
you go.
great, because even though you might have kids all across the spectrum of skills, who with the content, all of those kids throughout that process are building that social learning, those social skills, right? And the communication skills, which we know is going to help them in their classes, because we want kids to be communicating with us. So that's a really great like layer to be teaching students as well. I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. To add to that and echo that, like I think I talk so much about like the way that I teach science, like with the phenomenon based like units, like that. Oh, that the whole goal of teaching that way, where it's not just like phenomenon based, but their students are in small groups and they're constantly collaborating, and it's all about like I'm getting my kids to talk all the time. I mean, I'm trying to get them to talk a lot. Like the whole like reason that methodology exists is to target the I don't like the word deficit, but it's when a kid like comes into high school and they've gotten F's in science, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, and then because they assign F's in sixth grade, which is a whole other thing. These kids are maybe technically 150% behind, right? If like a kid's getting 100% and they're getting 50% first year, and then the second year same thing, and the third year same thing. And so the whole like pedagogy that we kind of employ with the AST style teaching is to target that, right? So like you can meet kids where they're at, and then you can get all kids to grow. And then like for the kids that have have had a lot of access to resources this last year, who have been to keep with the content and might be ahead of some other students, like they can still go really far, and so can the kids that are further behind. So but that requires a radical change to one's pedagogy if they don't already have that. But equity, like I guess it all comes down to equity, like understanding what equity is, and then understanding how the way that we structure our classroom, the way that we set up the physical layout of the classroom, and then each individual unit and each individual lesson, like will help those kids succeed next year.
That's big.
Yeah, it's really big.
It's so big. It's so big.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, the idea is that on average, right, you get what 28 students to one teacher, and then if you get that class culture going where kids expect to be in a group and they're expected to be collaborating with their peers, the teacher student ratio really is no longer 28 to 1, because if you have what 5-6 groups, and groups of 4-5 depending, and then it takes some of the burden of delivery off you, and then you have just all these little groups collaborating and talking. And so you're working on your social abilities, you're working on your content, and you're working on your relationship with the students, and then student-student relationship. So really you're doing multiple things if you structure your classroom in that fashion. Obviously you can't do it now because social distancing, but if we go back, the model of having the single row desks or a single row or whatever, that is maybe for like seniors or whatever in pre-calc or calc or physics in high school. Yeah, that works because they're basically out the door high school, and they've already experienced high school, and they're on the way out. But if you're talking about your freshmen, sophomores, even juniors, that format of seating can be really powerful if done correctly.
Yeah, 100%. I think another place that I'm trying to help make gains right now is in the content area. I think that traditionally, we have standards we have to teach, we have content we have to teach. And that one thing that's been really beneficial for the hybrid, the 35-minute classes that we're in, is that you don't have time to teach everything. So you already know you have to cut a bunch of things out, which I just think encourages teachers to be proactive, and instead of just cutting things, to focus on those things that are the most important for next year. So it's allowed me, and I combine it with a lot of my emotional stuff, my emotional development for students too. Now, instead of talking about like we're reading Mice and Men right now, instead of talking about how we're here to watch character development across the course of the book, it's just like, yeah, we're going to look at character development But every day we talk about isolation and the damages of isolation in a society, and how having a little bit more power than the person next to you can actually be really tempting to turn into a cruel outcome for us and for them. So building those emotional skills while we're focusing on the learning, super powerful. Reading with the students every single day instead of just saying, hey, you're going to go home and read this, encourages those students to build that emotional connection through you as the teacher to the material, in the hopes that next year they'll be more likely to read for that sophomore teacher. Things like that, being able to just really, and then, I always say I'm so excited to see kids in school. I mean, I don't know half their faces, but it's just like, I'm so excited that you're here. Let me tell you all the 5 things that show me that you're going to be a successful person in 2 years. And being able to do that in a genuine fashion, I think is going to help those students in the fall come back to school with the hope that things are going to be really positive. So it's helping my kids feel like they're emotionally strong and capable of talking about their emotions, feeling positive and optimistic when they get to school, having just a clear focus so that when all those freshman English students become sophomores, like they all know what the expectation is when it comes to communicating that learning in the classroom. Just one thing, being able to just provide one detail in class each day so that a teacher knows you're paying attention. I think those are 3 little things that I can do and that I am doing right now just to help my students have a little bit of buoyancy in whatever ocean we're going to be in next year.
Yeah.
It's going to be rough.
Yeah.
We are, though, at 20 minutes. So any final thoughts on the topic? I'm sorry to push it. It's such a big topic, too.
That is such a big topic. I'll just quickly echo, like, I think to your point, Brian, about like really emphasizing to the kids how stoked we are that they're back in the building. Like that is like such a simple, I mean, I guess we should probably be genuinely excited before we tell them that we are. But like that alone, like that breaks down like the initial barrier to a relationship is like, I am happy to see you. Like, I'm so glad you're here, and just like telling them that every single day is something that's like a really easy like first step to just like finally they'll be like, okay, shut up, we know you're happy to see us. Okay. Like they won't yeah, I just think that that's going to be super important, especially next year, from like admin, from front desk staff, from teachers, from counselors, from literally everybody.
Cesar, last thoughts?
No, I think she is echoing what I was thinking. But I will add something. We're out of time. But I think what's really reduced my stress level this, this last few weeks / month and a half is, is what you said, Brian, is like prioritizing the content that is reasonable, and then delivering that well, and make sure the students get that well, has really reduced my pressure of, hey, I got to meet this timeline. I got to cover this much content. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to teach this and I'm going to teach it well. And my stress level, I just like, and so thinking next year when we come back, along those lines, I know content is important, but, I find that the pacing has really, really reduced my stress and anxiety this semester. And if I feel less stressed, then my students are going to feel less stressed.
100%. And then you're both going to last longer in school. That's like the other thing.
And what's more important is the rate of these gray hairs will maybe slow down. Who knows? Who knows?
All right, let's outro with successes. I'll start, and that way we can finish with one of you. So my freshman, we call it the regular. It's just the 9th grade English class that I have. I have one student that comes in every day, and whenever I'm like, hey, we need to open the book, she's always like harumping, like audibly, just like, or like as she's walking out of class today, I'm telling the class, hey, we're going to do a project tomorrow. So we're just going to like intro it. She's just like, all of a sudden her feet are dragging and her shoulders are slumped, but she always comes to class. Like she always comes to class. She's happy to be in class. She pretends like she doesn't love it when we're reading the book out loud, but she cried at the end. Like she was like hardcore. At one point she's like, are we going to read the chapter with what happened to the dog today? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, please don't. Like I can't even handle it today. So you know that she's engaged with the stuff. So I love that because she's emotionally like just sharing. But it feels successful because when kids still come back to class, and I know that some kids don't know it, they don't have to be in class. There's 100 other places they could be at any time. They only have to be in class once every 5 days, like legally. So any of these kids could be skipping our classes at any time. And so the fact that they show up might be because they're brainwashed, might be because they've been parented well. But kids, in my experience, are only show up to class when they want to be there. So seeing this kid come into class, even though she's harumping, which I think is hilarious, it feels like a success for me. So.
Amazing. Cesar?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of my successes, and with the success is, so I'm new to the high school at Leavenworth, and for the freshmen coming in, there's like, hey, I'm a new teacher, so regardless, I was going to be a new teacher no matter what. So I've already won them over, because freshmen, But with the sophomores and juniors, I'm new in the building and it's remote, seeing them behind the screens, and now I'm a real person. So it's been really just like a brick wall of emotion, nothing there. And I think my successes has been like, I'm barely getting some emotion. I'm barely getting some genuine conversations about their life, what they do, what they enjoy doing, whether it's, playing Rocket League or playing World of Warcraft or, dirt biking, all that stuff. And I did a Yoda impression in front of my class today, talking about notes and tests and grades. And I killed it, even though it sounded a little bit like Kermit the Frog. But you know what? They're both green creatures. And so it was good.
That's so insensitive. My goodness. They have like different kinds of felt make up their bodies. Oh my gosh, Cesar.
I know, but if you guys want to hear my Yoda impression, here it goes.
Let's do it. Here we go.
I said, if A is what you seek, Cornell notes you must take. Here it goes. If A is what you seek, Cornell notes you must take.
What? That's like, we're going to have to add a segment, like teaching with Yoda, and with just like one tiny little Yoda lesson every week. Oh, that'd be so good.
Yeah, that was Yoda.
Oh my God.
That was money, man. I can't. Yeah, of course you won today.
That is amazing.
That was it.
I can't even follow that up. I have one, but side note, the kids are decorating our bulletin boards like outside our classrooms, and I forget who's making yours again. Is it Cesar? Who's making your bulletin board?
It's a student from Rosalind's class, and it's Chase.
Okay, yeah. So who's like knows all about Star Wars, and his bulletin board looks amazing. It's not complete yet. Well, it's so good.
Yeah,
I'm gonna throw pictures onto the show next time for sure.
I will.
Yeah. So I have reinforcement that like little tiny conversations with kids are really important. The kids in freshman English are doing like a business writing unit, and they started implementing like how kids should be writing emails to teachers. And so I've gotten this like flood of emails in the last day from students that are like well organized and like grammar, everything's perfect and everything. But it's really funny what they fixate on. They'll be like, hey, I really appreciate that last semester you let me turn in that one assignment late. Like, thank you so much for that. Sincerely, and then their name. And then or like little things like that, where it's like kids remember the little details, right? And so getting these emails from kids has been truly delightful the last like 24 hours, and has reinforced that just like even just little interactions, little like, sure, turn this assignment in late or whatever, I don't care, like just graces, I guess, little graces, like the kids remember, and they'll remember months later. It's pretty cool.
That is way cool. I saw one of my kids' faces today at the store for the first time ever. The student just transferred into my Avid class this year for her senior year, so I have no idea what she looked like. And I heard someone yelling at me from her car out at Safeway, and I was like, what? It's me, Taylor. And I'm like, what? Who? What? I was so just like, you have a face. And that's what first off, eyes and above, you have an expectation and it's never the same. But
yes.
Oh man, it felt so good. I was just like, this is great. Next year, we're all going to be in like face shock.
Yeah.
So with that, thank you very much for listening to Teachers Talk. If you were listening, if this was just on the background and you were watching a TV show, that's good too. It counts as a view, so that's wonderful. Please feel free to hit the subscribe button and the like button. Ask questions you want in the comments. We've had like 0 comments so far, so we'll reply to anybody. I mean, that's kind of my motto. If you only have one fan, you better treat that fan like they're your best fan. So once again, I'm Brian Higgins. This is Molly Ravitz and Cesar Mendoza. They might be in different spots on your screen, but thank you very much for listening and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.